Last episode, I told you about the party and how one phone call ultimately ended up changing my life. But today, I want to show you something that I didn't understand until years later. This relationship wasn't built on one huge lie, it was built one drop at a time. Because if he had told me everything up front, I would have walked away for sure, but that's not what ended up happening. Instead, the truth dripped out over weeks, over months, and every time another piece of incriminating evidence came out, I'd find another reason or excuse to stay. As I tell today's story, I want to see, as always, if you can spot the clues before I did. Welcome to Case File Number 1, the series where we go back through one of the most painful relationships of my life, and together we uncover every clue I missed. Your job is simple. See if you can spot the red flags before I finally did, because if you can learn to see them in my story, you'll start recognizing them in your own. By this point, it's the middle of 2014, so probably like the summer, and life is good. I'm doing my thing, I'm exploring the world, I'm traveling, doing music full time, I'm meeting a ton of people. My life has completely changed career-wise, and I am enjoying every minute of it. And again, to add to that, I now have this budding relationship with this guy back home, and things seem to be trucking along. I'm really excited because this guy seems to be really into me. He seems stable. He has a professional career. At the party, when we were walking out, he told me that he was a mortgage loan officer. And so that's what I assumed he was doing every day as far as his profession went. But then somewhere over the course of some weeks following that initial conversation, the information changed. I remember him telling me he wasn't a mortgage loan officer anymore, and he was either already waiting tables or he was looking to start a restaurant gig waiting tables. And I remember having a slight cause for pause. It wasn't huge at the time, but I was thinking, like, why did he just tell me that? Or I was wondering, well, how long has he actually been out of a job? Or how long since he's actually not been in the mortgage loan business? Like, did he just tell me that because it sounded good? Or like, what was the deal? I remember having these questions in my mind, but I never did follow up with him about it. I just kind of chalked it up to, well, maybe he didn't tell me the full explanation because he might not have been sure that we were going to continue talking or embarking upon a relationship. So I figured, well, it's still pretty early on. He's telling me now, so I didn't think much of it. Now, if it had been you, would you have chalked it up to, it just hadn't came up yet, or it's not that big of a deal, or he absolutely lied and this is a no-go, a deal breaker? Let me know in the comments. And honestly, what made it even more easier to excuse or ignore things was the connection that I felt with him. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I had never been telepathically connected to anyone, especially on this level. No one in my past relationship history had I ever been this psychically intertwined with. It was like kind of eerily scary. We would finish each other's sentences. I would think of him, and in that moment, he would immediately call, or vice versa. I would think of things that I wanted him to do, and he would show up doing them without me saying anything, and vice versa. It was just kind of crazy. Like, I thought, whoa, this connection is intense and it's out of this world. This must mean something. Like, clearly he has to be a soulmate because I've never had this experience with anybody. That has to count for something. Now, here's a question for you. Have you ever had a crazy, intense, telepathic, or psychic spiritual connection with someone like this before? Let me know in the comments. We also had very similar church backgrounds. At the time, we were both heavily into vision boarding and manifestation. Well, at least I thought he was, because had he truly been into it, he would have known his energy was screwing him, but I digress. I suppose I probably would have known better too. So there's that. And then one day, I remember him calling me. I was at my apartment. I remember him saying, Portia, I need to tell you something. Or maybe I asked, is there anything I need to know that you haven't told me? I can't remember who actually started the conversation. But during this call was when he told me he had a felony. So I asked, what happened? Like, a felony for what? And that's when he began to tell me when he was a teenager, 17, 18, or 19 years old, he had some sort of altercation with a girl who was maybe 15 or 16 in a bathroom. He said, this is what he said, that they were consensually fooling around and she got mad about something and decided to call the cops. He minimized it because at this point, we're in our early 30s. This allegedly happened over a decade prior when he was 19. So at the time, I thought, well, you know, that was a very long time ago. Everybody deserves second chances. And I remember my response to him being, okay, well, you know, we'll work it out. Because at this point, I'm invested. I'm emotionally connected and things are good. And I'm giving him kudos and brownie points for being honest. It's not something that I had to find out. However, what I didn't do was my own background check. What I never did was fact check to see if the timeline lined up. I never really asked any further probing questions about him being classified as a sex offender. But if I knew then what I know now, that would have been one of the biggest smoking guns in the entire experience. I also remember his response to my response being very surprised. Like, it was almost like he had won The Price is Right, because his vocal tone being like, oh, okay. Like, he was surprised that I was willing to go along with it. He was surprised that I was still ready to be with him and continue building a relationship. That should have told me a lot, but I thought maybe he was surprised or relieved to know that I wasn't gonna throw him away because of a situation that happened in his past. But now that I think about it, I'm curious. What do you think it meant? Now, those were the clues. Maybe you caught them, maybe you didn't. I know I didn't at the time, so let's go back. When it came to his work situation, the job wasn't the issue. Waiting tables was never the problem. Honest work is honorable. The issue is him having presented himself initially as someone he no longer was, and then correcting the story later after the emotional hook and investment had already begun. That's the first lesson of the drip, because it's oftentimes not that false information is given. Sometimes it's delaying true information. Now, I also confused chemistry with compatibility. Because our connection was so intense, the spiritual similarities, we came from the same cultural, ethnic background, we were in the same city, environmental proximity, and how we could read each other's minds. I thought that this meant something, and it didn't. When I say that, I'm referring to emotional safety. I thought chemistry meant honesty. I thought chemistry meant loyal faithfulness. I thought it meant that it would make a healthy partner, and that's simply not true. They are not the same thing. Chemistry is just chemistry. It doesn't equal and mean anything more than that. Chemistry does not tell you anything about a person's character. It just tells you whether you're strongly attracted to someone or not, and whether that person could be strongly attracted to you when it comes to likes and similarities. Another big revelation or lesson that I learned is that emotional investment changes our evaluation process. Because by the time he told me about the felony, I wasn't evaluating whether this relationship made sense. I had started evaluating whether I could make it work. And those are two completely different questions. I wasn't asking, is this a healthy partner for me? I was asking, how do I keep what I'm already attached to? That's what investment does, emotionally speaking. It changes the questions that we are asking ourselves. What I've now come to realize is that the drip wasn't really about him. It was honestly about me. Because every new piece of information forced me to choose between reality and potential. The truth versus the future. The future I already started imagining. And every single time, I would choose the future until reality became inexcusable to ignore. So again, I want to hear from you. Which clue did you catch? And or which clue would have had you walking the other way? Would it have been the job and finding out what he actually did versus what he told you? Would it have been the felony? Would it have been the chemistry? Because sometimes that can scare somebody too. Like, that's a bit too much. Let me know in the comments because I'm genuinely interested. Looking back, I thought I had heard the worst and I was thinking, well, if that's as bad as it gets, I think we're okay. I hadn't in the slightest, because there was one conversation that should have changed everything. And it wasn't about his job. It wasn't about the felony. And there were many others that followed that, but this one was about his mother. And that's where we're going next in episode 3.